with Brianna and Scott, where we are living the decentralized life. Join us for the latest crypto news, talk, and analysis. And now, here are J. Scott McMillan and Brianna Turk.
Hello, hello, all adoring fans. It's episode 26 again. I think now I'm going to leave it like that because it's always episode 26. Why not? I'm Scott. Hi, Brianna. How you doing today?
Hey, Scott. I'm good. Yeah, episode 26 times 6, I think is where we're at. No, I'm doing good. It's been a great week. A lot, as always. I have some different articles kind of going in multiple directions, but interesting stuff. So the first one of the ones I'm going to bring is the world's first Bitcoin-centric AI, Spirit of Satoshi. So we're going to hear a little bit about that. We're going to dive in a little bit to Web3, very basics, as we talked about last week, that we would bring forward. Try to create somewhat of an understanding of what that entails. If we get to it, a little bit about the future vision of Coinbase.
Oh.
So that's what I have. How are you?
Yeah, doing good. Kind of rough week for me physically. My old back is not wanting to behave, so the weather is so beautiful, and I'm just not able to partake. So that's kind of a bummer. But let's see, I got my new apartment. I haven't quite moved in, so that's exciting. So yeah, that's good stuff. Crypto week, yeah, I mean, we kind of knew it was going to come around, so it's been kind of boring the last few weeks, but not this week. Boy, lots happening. Big news. Definitely going to talk about, BlackRock, about Bitcoin. I think it's up to 31 today. So that's exciting news. So we'll bring that. We'll talk about that. I think it's really a big deal. What else? I've got a little bit of AI too. Just some general news, and then kind of a mix of a few different things. We're going to talk. So the big thing about BlackRock is the news is that they have applied to do a Bitcoin ETF, and it's funny because I thought I knew what an ETF was, and I asked somebody like, oh no, it's a little bit different, and it's a really really big deal. So we're going to talk about what ETF is today. I'm going to do a little go back to school. So that should be good. Yeah, that's about it. So let's get on with it. Let's see. What do you got? Oh, let's see if you share your screen here. Right now it's just me. And I think as soon as you share your screen, it'll pop on.
Okay. Let me know when you see it.
Of course it doesn't want to. Let's see. There we go. Okay, good. You're on.
Okay. 1 second here. Okay, the Spirit of Satoshi. So this is the world's first Bitcoin-centric AI. It's just been announced, and this is really exciting. I'm bringing this forth, and the reason why I'm excited is because we know that the current ChatGPT and there's guardrails put in place when it comes to specific topics. So it makes me think of the importance of having these different avenues of AI. I think is important, especially as everything's transferring over to technology, because it reminds me of like the burning of the books. And I'm a huge book fan. I like hard copy books. I like to have them. I think it's important to have hard documents for me, but I also think since we are moving into this technological world so heavily, it's important to have various avenues. And that's what I see for this is a way to have information that is outside of specific guardrails, and so that it can't be burned, hopefully. So what this is going to be is it's to revolutionize the understanding and accessibility of Bitcoin knowledge. So according to this press release that was shared with Bitcoin Magazine, this is a large language model being built from first principles oriented on the core values of Bitcoin, trained on the best Bitcoin data in the world, and fine-tuned by the global Bitcoin community. And that release stated that the development is driven by the need to provide an alternative to mainstream as we all know, generalize language models and preserve the collective intelligence of the Bitcoin community. So I think this is really great. The goal of this initiative is to orange pill or introduce Bitcoin to the next billion people, which, another side note here, I think is just super important because when people go down the Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency and Web3 and AI, all of that, when they go down these rabbit holes, it's moving at such an exponential rate, the understanding and the knowledge and the things that are built on top of it, that people that get into it just get so carried away, which is great. But there are still people who don't even have those basic concepts, and they kind of get lost in the understanding of it all. So that's why I love this, because they're using efficient and effective tools that can operate at scale while remaining impactful on an individual level. So in the coming weeks, the model will be open sourced, and the entire Bitcoin community will be engaged to assist in training and fine tuning it. So cool. And the project also plans to offer sats bounties to incentivize participation. So that's also cool. There's incentives there for people to be paid in sats to be able to participate.
Nice.
And any thoughts on that, Scott?
So how do we get involved in this, or where do we find out when it's going to be available?
That's a good question, and it's a question I do not have the answer to. But yeah, I'm sure that diving into this article, there may be an avenue through how to get involved. But yeah, I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure on the steps to be taken.
Yeah, it also made me think of something I thought about before, but these large language models, I guess you can create your own version of it and train it on just the data that you want. And I wonder about that, because the first thing I saw here that just made me like go, was that it is trained on the best Bitcoin data in the world. And my first thought is, according to who? And it's not just Bitcoin, but it's like these things, sometimes there's a lot of great stuff about the AI stuff and some scary stuff. And one of my thoughts is like, it's like garbage in, garbage out, like how you train these and what you train them on. And so I didn't realize at the beginning that you could create your own little mini versions of these, use the same technology, but just give it specific data, which is kind of scary because you could give it just really bad data, or, this is a little bit of a tangent, but what I do like about this is then it did follow up and say that the Bitcoin community is going to then help train it or improve it or whatever. So that's good. But yeah, I've got a couple different articles on AI today, and some really just, we're learning so much about AI, and I don't know, I just got a lot of ideas on AI, but all right. I love it. This is good. What else you got?
I like that you point that out, Scott, because these are the questions with all of this coming out, the validity of the information that's behind all of this stuff, I think is making people question. I know it certainly has made me question and be more aware of where information is coming from, and just kind of developing that awareness that everything that you read is one point of view or multiple point of views, brought down to a single source that may be missing other information, and or may not be capturing the whole, or maybe have a bias behind it. So where there's those scary things that are involved with AI, it also allows us to ask those questions and be more aware of that, because that existed before AI. It existed in articles that we were reading and that people were taking kind of, I mean, you rewind like 10 years ago when you're looking at the media, like mainstream media, that people never questioned. I mean, some people did, but most people just went along with it. And it was like, so yeah, it allows us to see it for that.
Well, the media used to be journalism. They had an ethical. You get a degree in journalism, and it's kind of you work with other journalists, and they train you in the ethical ways to be a journalist. And boy, that's just, I don't even know what it's like in journalism school anymore. I mean, that's what I started off in, went to school in journalism. I didn't end up with that degree, but yeah. And so it's totally different now. But you're right. That is probably the first and the most widespread instance of how information can be twisted and very powerful if you put it to use for your goals or your perspective. And this is like, on steroids, because now what we're feeding these things. Now, hopefully, I don't know exactly, I'm not an engineer, so I don't know exactly what goes into this, but from all the information we're hearing, they have to be trained. And so we always heard in the beginning of ChatGPT that it was trained on the internet. Well, or at least my perspective was, oh, okay, it's on everything in the internet. So it's gonna be the good, the bad, the ugly, but the good also. And I thought, okay, it's even. Then I realized that they also put in very limited specific knowledge into that too. They would put, gosh, I can't even think of the examples, but they would have proprietary libraries of data on a particular genre or topic that would get fed into there. So I don't know if it had more weight or less weight, but it wasn't just like the average of the whole internet, which kind of made me feel good, because the way I look at the internet is it's just like human society, where you've got the good and the bad, but it's even, right? Anybody has access to it. So I don't know. I just don't know enough about how these things are built. In fact, let me pop over to one of my articles, because it really dovetails perfectly into this. So this is a weird article I found today, and the title was really weird. AI is a lot of work. And so I don't know. I looked here. It says, the technology becomes ubiquitous. A vast tasker underclass is emerging. I'm like, what? What's a tasker? This is really interesting. I would recommend, oh gosh, I'm trying to think. This article, people should read this article. It's kind of interesting. If you're interested in this kind of stuff, it's at The Verge, verge.com. That's where this article is, because I kind of skimmed it, but it actually has a lot of interesting stuff. So this is a guy, he says he graduated from college in Nairobi, 30 years, he was 30 years old, and he got a job as an annotator. And it was just this tedious processing job. And it says that what he was doing was he was training AI by tagging. And so I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. It says here, AI learns by finding patterns in enormous quantities of data. But first, that data has to be sorted and tagged by people. I'm like, what? I had no idea about that. Then it says a vast workforce, mostly hidden behind machines, is taking place. And it says in this guy's case, he was labeling footage for self-driving cars. And he would identify every vehicle, pedestrian, cyclist, anything a driver needs to be aware of. And he would go frame by frame, and he would tag every possible camera angle. And he said it's difficult, repetitive work. A several second blip of footage took 8 hours to annotate, for which he was paid about $10. Now, of course, this is in Nairobi. But I'm like, okay, now I'm interested. What is this all about? So I go on further. And I sort of just highlighted the points I thought were important. It says, then this guy, Joe, he's like, I'm not making $10. And he's like, there seems to be, he would go to work in these factories. Let's see, I think there's a picture of it, like, just like, not really a data center, but just tons of people sitting in cubes staring at computer screens. And the way that I understand this is that they're looking at footage and they're basically labeling, putting tags, right? Or keywords, if you will, on all this footage. And it started to make sense to me, like, oh, yeah, because you feed, so the AI has all this data, but it doesn't know what to call it. And so this is how I think this works, that a lot of this data then had to be tagged, like this is this, this is this, this is this, so that when we type in our prompts and we use keywords or whatever, the AI knows here's that tag and then here's the footage that represents that. And it does that over millions and millions of times. And I guess I never realized that there was this human aspect of this. So so let's go on. It says then he created a boot camp to train people on this. And he started making a lot more money, but he would crank out all these people that he taught how to do this. And so you would label objects like uploading, well, just anything. So uploading photos of yourself staring into a webcam with a blank expression, and then a grin, and then wearing a motorcycle helmet. Each project. So I mean, it was just all this weird. Think of all of the TikTok and reels and all this stuff out there that makes no sense, and so somebody had to sort of categorize that, I guess. And here's the other part. These people didn't know what they were working on. They just knew they were supposed to catalog this, and they really had no idea that they were training AI. And this was 2018, 2019, maybe even earlier that this started. But what was interesting was that the company employing them was called Remotasks, a website offering work to anyone fluent in English. And like most annotators, Joe, this guy, was unaware of what it was. And it turns out that they are a subsidiary of a multi-billion-dollar Silicon Valley data vendor, and they have clients like OpenAI and military and probably Microsoft and some of these other guys. So OpenAI in the early days was using these humans to tag all this information to help create probably ChatGPT. What else here? So huge numbers of people labeling data to train it and to clarify data when it gets confused. I don't know if it was in this article, another article, but in the early days of self-driving cars, a lady got run over because she was on a bicycle, and the AI or the car was trained on what a bicycle looks like, so it can recognize it and then know what to do, what a person looks like, but it never knew what a person walking a bicycle looked like. And now that's interesting because, again, that was all about labeling. In the early days, the AI didn't know what to do with that, so it just plowed into her. Like it didn't know how to stop. It's like, I don't know what this is. Okay, move along. Now, again, I'm just sort of paraphrasing that, but this is where my mind started going when I was reading this article. Let's see if there's anything else in here. So it's a pretty big, long article. I skimmed through it. I would suggest anybody that's really interested in this, try to track down this article. Let me see if I can actually get the exact URL here. Yeah, it's called AI is a Lot of Work. It's on The Verge, theverge.com. Probably, you can look at that. But I don't know if anybody finds that interesting because I had no idea. What do you think? Does that make sense to you, Brianna?
Yeah, that's super interesting. I don't know. I just have like multiple thoughts going through my head. Like, first one is just like, what? Like, it amazes me what people are doing and spending their time doing. And like, where do these people, then I like see those people, like, where do they get paid? Where does that money come from is what I want to know. All those people sitting in that room tagging.
Well, that's what I'm saying. They work for this Memotask company who pays them, $10 an hour, right, to do this for 8 hours. And so, I mean, it's like, and the article did talk about this. There's this whole classification, I guess, of these, what do you call them, like dead end shitty jobs or like that, where there's just this data entry kind of stuff that you don't even know what you're doing. You're just doing it. It's like you have no like getting no motivation. Like, I'm working on this to improve the world. You don't know any of that. You're just doing stuff and you get a paycheck. Well, I mean, what is factory work in a lot of ways? Factory work kind of like that, I would think. Actually, I work on factories. It is a lot like that. And so there's that. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if this is still the case, if this is that's what I'm saying, the article might go into depth of like if this is still happening or if that's how it kind of got started. But it makes sense in a way, but it also is like, okay, does that mean that AI will need this for a long time and that there's going to be workers that are displaced? There'll be these kind of jobs. I mean, who's going to want to go to this kind of job, right? So I don't know. Lots of like, oh my gosh, what does that all mean? I don't know.
Yeah. A lot of questions. Yeah, it's like, so it almost seems like at a certain point, they would take that job right there and train AI enough. Like, that's how they would develop enough of an understanding, I guess, for it to be able to do that.
Yeah.
and tag it.
Probably.
Super interesting. It makes me think of a documentary I watched one time that had, or it was just like a special, and it was all about how they had these cameras and these like these pig farms, and they were studying every snapshot of their face and why that's relative to humans. It had something to do with like relating that to humans, and then it had to do with how the camera they would study and whether this was done like intent like without people knowing or people were signed up. I don't know how that part worked, but through the camera of people going through their phone and reading a certain message or post, and then the emotion of their face, uh, and detecting what that emotion was, and then putting that into a category, and then feeding people ads that have to do with that emotion.
You lost me at pigs.
It goes far. I guess it's hard to explain, but it goes far. I guess just like studying, it's the same thing, like studying these different behaviors and like facial images. It's like a facial imaging thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's just so much when it comes to all that stuff that's behind the scenes that's super interesting. Um,
I remember
yeah,
watching
I
a
don't know.
couple of those type of documentaries, and when it was focused on like social media and like all the data that's being fed into social media, and then it did go into like all the facial recognition stuff, and how like especially in China, there's cameras everywhere, and in Europe too, and it's just watching your face all day long, and they can track your face or whatever. And it is interesting. I hadn't really thought about that, but yeah, now you've got this AI thing, which is kind of the same, kind of smacks. It's data. It's our data. It's us. These AIs are trained on us, and it gets kind of crazy. Yeah, it also reminded me of this. Let's see if I can share my screen here. Hold on. Try this. Have you ever seen this show called Severance? It's on Apple TV. I don't know if it's on any other networks. This show called Severance reminded me exactly of this. This was in the future, and basically there was this big corporation, if I can remember right, that people would go to work in. And they would do something, I think you had to volunteer, but basically they would sever your memory. And so they had a way that basically when you go to work, you're like one person, and you cannot remember anything about your real life. All you know is what goes on inside these four walls. And it was very dystopian, kind of remote, like wasn't very many people, lots of rooms and lots of hallways and just a few people that worked in there. And the work that they had to do was literally just sitting at these computers and doing random tasks that made no sense. And they never in the show, like they didn't show you what they're doing. You just knew they had to do these little tasks on the computer, and they were meaningless. And for what I could figure out, they were just stuff like this. Just they had no idea. But all they knew is they had to get these tasks done, and they were rewarded on how many tasks they did, and just all this stuff about office, teams, and there was usually 4 or 5 people in a team. And then when they would go home, they would go through the elevator, and their memory would switch back to their normal life, and they would have no recollection of what they had done in the work. And so it was this dystopian, view of basically how people, they were just brainwashed to work for this corporation, and they could do anything, like whatever that data was for. Nobody would know, right? So they could be doing really bad things with the data, with the information, and nobody would know, because once you leave that office, you have no recollection of what you're doing. And then you're living your normal life, and you have no idea what you're doing at your job. I don't know why I thought of that, but just now as we're talking about this, I'm just like conjuring up these sort of weird things that can come out of AI and all this stuff, the data, facial recognition. And this article that I showed, it opened up a whole nother thought process. Like, we have no idea what the hell this stuff is, not even the creators. And I bet if I ask 10 people, maybe one person would have known about this, about humans having to tag a lot of the basic AI data that goes into these things. I bet nobody knew that. Now, I don't even know what that means. Is that good, bad, or indifferent? But to me, that was like, well, I didn't know that. And not that that's that big of a deal. It kind of makes sense. But if you extrapolate that out, it's like, well, now we're, is that good? It might be good, right? Because the AI is trained on what we as humans think things are. I think that's good, because if it wasn't, if it was just, now if it can go off and think and create on its own, we have no idea what it's going to think or create. At least now, if we're tagging everything, at least we know that it can't go off and, well, it probably could, but basically it's not going to go off and just make shit up. I don't know.
Well, I don't know though, because aren't they now, there's like the other type where they are teaching it to have a conscience, like.
Well, AGI is supposed to have reasoning. I don't know if they call it a conscious, but I think what your point is, I'll let you finish in a minute, but it's, AGI, right, means that it can make decisions based on whether things are good or bad or right or wrong. Right? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I don't know. I was just, all of it, just like what you just said with that whole show that you brought up too. It just brings a lot of questions. You think a lot about the risk to reward. It's really easy to get excited. There's so much of the AI stuff that's so exciting, but I don't know if it's worth the risk, like when you really think about it. But time will tell. I don't know. It's crazy what's happening here.
Risk
But
reward. That's a good point. It really is. Is it worth the risk? And well, do you have any more articles on AI?
no, not on AI.
Okay. Well, let me do I have another one since we're on the topic. Let's just stay on here, and then we'll get to some of your stuff. Okay. So this is a U.S. law. Lawmakers introduced National AI Commissions Act, and so this kind of dovetails exactly what we're thinking. It's like, okay, we need to slow down here. When the creators of this stuff don't really know what it's going to do, and they're afraid. I think there's been some talk that Sam Altman, it's like, he doesn't sleep well at night, worrying about this stuff. And I can only imagine about, it just makes me think of Robert Oppenheimer, like he didn't know what creating this atom bomb was going to create. And he was tortured by it. Anyway, so yeah, a group of lawmakers introduced a bill called the National AI Commission to establish a commission to oversee AI development usage. The bill was just introduced, bipartisan, so that's all good. It will closely follow recently passed and signed EU AI Act. And this act monitors how generative AI, ChatGPT-4 is built and released commercially, and it also protects users by inhibiting live recording, detailing, and other facial recognition systems. So I'm not sure what that means, but I guess they can't feed our live data into these things. I don't know. So I don't have a lot to talk about this other than this is good. I think we need something like this. I think even the CEOs of these businesses are probably glad about this. The other thing just dawned on me: why is the EU always like getting out in front of the US? It's like the EU did the crypto bill, and now they've got the AI bill, and it's like the US is just following them. It's like, what's going on here? Nothing against our British friends, but it's like, why is the US so behind in this stuff? I mean, we were supposed to be the creators of all this great tech, and the leaders, but doesn't look like it's happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anyways, that's all I got on that. Yeah, what do you think? Do we need this stuff? Do we need
I
some?
mean, I think it may be time to start investing in that bunker. Like, that's what I'm thinking. Like, I don't know. This is just, it gets to be a lot I think it's hard for all of us pure minds that we are to think about what actually goes on in other people's, there's some people doing some really weird things out there. and have like, I just think that you get this kind of stuff into the wrong hands. But then it comes into how much can you regulate on other people? There's like those two sides. Like, what rights, like, should everybody have the right to do the same things? But then you have people with some really sinister things going on in their head that will use this type of stuff for their evil ways or greedy ways or whatever it may be. Just so, yeah, I don't know. It definitely, I think, there's a reason to be scared of it all. I think, or okay, there's dangers involved with it all. I think, maybe not live in
Danger.
fear, not live in fear, but I think that there are dangers with it. And then it just raises more questions. I was reading an article about Elon Musk and his some kind of project of storing consciousness. And when I read that, it just raises more questions of like, well, what is going on here? It's all really bizarre. And like, what is it necessary? I don't know.
Yeah. Two things that I thought of was one, the way that our our economies work, the U.S. economy and capitalism. It's all based on money, and in the good days, what I sort of call the good days of capitalism, the machine worked really well, where you would innovate and produce based on the fact you could make money. If you knew if you knew that the risk that, okay, this is interesting about risk reward. When I look at capitalism in a positive way, the positive view of it, because there's some negative sides of it for sure, but the positive side is you've got people that are willing to take risks and finance things, and those people that do that, the reward is to make money. And so they do extraordinary things. They create extraordinary things because of the capital that they can, earn from that. They wouldn't do it. I mean, very, very, very few people would do it just for no reason, right? And so that's just the machine, right? And it's worked incredibly well. But so when you've got something like this, that the AI that is dangerous potentially, like we can think of dangerous things that can happen, like even you don't have, even like really, really smart, educated people hopefully are thinking about that too. But all of us can think of some pretty dangerous things to happen. But the way the machine works is they're only going to do it if they can make money. And in fact, based on, if they're a publicly traded company, they have to. The CEOs have to do things that'll make money for the shareholders. So they're going to do, Sam Altman and all these guys, the AI titans, they're going to do it. If they can make money, they're going to do it. And from what we can tell, they are making money, or they're going to make money, So they're going to do it. So count on them pushing the envelope. So then the second question is, okay, well, if that's the machine, if that's the way things run, then they're going to take high risk. And the thing is, they think that their reward, if it's just money, is great, but what's the risk worth, right? They don't even know. I'm not sure if this is the first time that we've come across something that the risk is so high. The atomic bomb, they didn't know. I mean, you read that Oppenheimer or certain people literally did not know when they detonated that first bomb if it wouldn't set off some sort of catastrophic world-ending event. They did not know. And yet they did it anyways. Now you can say, well, we have managed to put that genie in the bottle, or at least hold it in there for the most part. It's a scary existence knowing that any minute that we could have nuclear Armageddon, but so far we've been able to do it. Maybe, I guess you take that and say that, AI could be the same thing, but we'll figure it out. We'll manage to keep it in the bottle. I don't know. Interesting stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Wow.
don't have. It's a lot. It's a lot to take in. almost too much.
It is. I was just saying the same thing. I'm like, wow, the tone of this show it really took an interesting turn. And that's what's so interesting. We've talked about it. We love these shows because we really don't know what's going to happen. They're organic, what we talk about. Sometimes we're into deep, heavy stuff, and most of the time we like to stay on the positive side. But yeah, this is a lot of
Yeah.
All right, well, let's turn it back to you. Maybe you got something new and refreshing.
Yeah, let's go to the lighter side of Coinbase, because I'm still, as we know, well, hold on, let me figure out where I'm at here. My note-taking system has taken a opposite of an upgrade, a downgrade. I don't really know what's happened, so I have to navigate through.
Oh, I just know it's green. It's all green today.
Yes, I don't. It's been like this. I don't know. It said it downgraded for some reason. So
You didn't pay. That's what happens. They turn off your electricity. You don't pay, it goes away.
okay, I found this to be interesting. This came out yesterday, and Coinbase, as we know, has been sued by the SEC. I think 2 weeks ago now, but it's not stopping anything. I know where you're going to hit on BlackRock and their ETF and how that's going to be facilitated through Coinbase. So now Brian Armstrong is talking about what he sees Coinbase eventually becoming, which is a super app. So what is a super app? He envisions that Coinbase, which is currently the centralized crypto exchange with various crypto products, will eventually become a super app, which is helping the Web3 economy. And the term super app is used for Web2 applications like Tencent's WeChat, which provide a vast array of services to users, including financial services to booking doctor's appointments. So for example, in Asia, for some time, whether this is the route we want to go, may be inevitable, people have apps that they use for digital money in all kinds of areas of their life. He said, he was stating this at the State of Crypto Summit. And he says, I think that in Coinbase, this case, we want to be that super app, but it's all going to be based on these decentralized protocols. He added that the app will be used not just for money and assets, but also for social interactions. A decentralized application is like digital apps found in mobile devices, but with added features of using blockchain technology. By decentralizing, DApps can create a digital economy of peer-to-peer services that keeps users' data out of the reach of large organizations behind it, eliminating monopolistic market. So this is pretty cool. And because it's taking the centralization of Coinbase where it stands now and moving it more, for what I see, into a decentralized route. And then I'm thinking about, so far over this last year, we've seen a lot of, we've seen apps such as WhatsApp, and I don't think Signal has it, but these other alternative messaging apps, and they have integrated, being able to transfer crypto through those peer-to-peer. And this is kind of the opposite. So this is would be taking Coinbase, the actual intermediary, and then being able to create that peer-to-peer through Coinbase, through messages. And if it's through decentralized means, that's being able to totally exchange peer-to-peer through messages without having to use those third parties, other than Coinbase, I guess, but without having to use things like PayPal or Venmo or having that possibility of being censored, all the things that all of this stands for. So yeah, I thought that was kind of cool to learn that that's where he sees the future headed. Any thoughts on that, Scott?
It seems to me that it's basically just the wallet. It's basically an app, a wallet that is going to allow you to do lots of different things, but all based on decentralized peer-to-peer, which is the good part. The interesting part is it still puts in a way it centralizes that wallet. Like now you got to go to one wallet, one centralized wallet. But the good thing is that on the network side, once you send your message or whatever, it's decentralized. So for some reason I keep thinking about Facebook, that they have WhatsApp and Facebook not only controls, they control everything end to end, the interface, the interaction, the app, and the whole network, right? Whereas the new part, and this is Web3, this is how I see Web3, is that you might still have an app provider like a Coinbase, or could be a Facebook, could be anybody, that has you don't have to, but I mean, if they're going to have multiple D apps, multiple things, you're going to go to that one application for a lot of your stuff. So that puts a lot of centralized authority really in that one app. So I don't know if you can ever get away from that, really, having some amount of centralized organization entity in the future of all this kind of stuff. But I guess the only other way around that would then be to have multiple apps besides Coinbase. Let's say Facebook and Coinbase, and you and I create one, and we all have the same apps. So there's no centralized, you can use any of our apps, and then we all use peer-to-peer. To me, that would be completely centralized. But I don't know if there's incentive for anyone to create that. I don't know. But yeah, so right now, every D app, let me think about this. I'm thinking about MetaMask. MetaMask right now for me is kind of this centralized application that I use for a lot of different stuff. But it's all on the back end. It's all decentralized transactions, basically. But each D app has its own website but I have to connect my MetaMask to it. So I'm kind of locked in. But the cool thing is there are other wallets. There are other decentralized wallets. I don't have to use MetaMask, but I just like them. I guess that's a normal thing. So I like MetaMask. I'm used to the functionality, but I use MetaMask to connect to 20, 30 different, D apps. And on the back side of it, it's all decentralized for the most part. And I think that maybe Brian Armstrong is thinking that, well, if he gets, if they shut down his ability to facilitate trading cryptocurrencies, this would be the thing he could do, right? Because he's now just a software provider providing access to all these other software applications. They're not necessarily cryptocurrencies. So I don't know if that's why. In fact, I've heard him say that, they're going to be in business no matter what. This is probably one of their visions. It is one of their visions for the future, which I think is good. I think the wallet technology, to me, is where all the action's at. And we don't really hear a lot about it, but I think there's a lot of work behind the scenes, because that's where you and I interact. That's where we connect. And it's really important that gets right. And I think there's a lot of work to it because they're very clunky right now. And they're a little bit dangerous. This whole private seed thing is not a very user-friendly method. We take pride in the crypto space. We take pride in the fact that we can self-custody our assets through our wallets, our digital wallets, and it's a great thing. But it's also puts a lot of responsibility on the person, and for crypto to flourish, this technology all around has to get better, and I think the wallet experience has to get a lot better. Which is why I think when Ledger was trying to address this, when they came out with this sort of backup procedure for the Ledger, I mean, they totally fumbled, the introduction of it and how they execute it and everything. But I think that's what's happening. Ledger was trying to get ahead of this because the wallet technology has to get a lot better. So.
that raised a couple thoughts that I want to just touch on really quick. First of all, the centralization when it comes to, like you were saying, with Coinbase and getting away from that. The other aspect of that, and this is where I get lost with DApps, is Apple. Okay, so with Apple, they just last week, this is just an example, they threatened a decentralized social media, I think it's called Nostr, Nostr, and said they're going to shut them down and remove them from their, not shut them down, sorry, remove them from their app store because they had in-app purchases, they said, of some sort that was not giving royalties to Apple. So and then you think about, so then we have Solana, who has the Solana phone, where I can see maybe easily being able to accessible these DApps. I mean, I'm just trying to like figure out how, if you're using an Apple phone, these DApps will play. But then that's where Web3 comes in, because everything from there, and I was just reading this whole guide called The Hitchhiker's Guide to Web3. And I know I was going to bring Web3 this week. I think I'll save it for next week and get more of that collected together because it's really interesting. But that's where a lot of this kind of starts to make sense beyond what's in existence right now and what we see when it comes to those centralized things, because everything's so decentralized there. So we'll go into that. And then
Apple,
lastly,
go ahead.
Go for it.
No, just that Apple is an interesting player because they're such a huge player, and they're gonna want to be involved in this, and they right now. So I think a lot of people, the phone is the future, and it's the main entity, and Apple, has this tremendous power behind what they can offer and not offer, and so when they say no to you or to an application, it can make or break them, right? And so right now, as far as I know, the issue is that they just want their cut, right? So if you're making money based on their access, to it, they want their cut from it. The Solana phone now might be interesting if that were to take off. Again, that would you'd have to have a Solana phone, so it's going to be a very, very small amount of the world, but eventually maybe that'll pick up if more Web3 type decentralized applications become incentivized. Like if people want to use these DApps, they're gonna want something that will give them decentralized access to it. Now Apple will, you can use, things that get onto the Apple Store can connect to DApps in a decentralized way as long as Apple gets their cut of it. I don't really know the detail of that. So just stay tuned. Apple is a big player. Their name should always be talked about in all of this stuff, with MetaMask and with Coinbase and whatever. Apple's, not going to go away easy. Maybe Facebook too, but I just think Apple has better position because they control that phone, and that is the method going forward. So what was your second point?
Yeah. Oh, and their new headset too. It was a smart move at the timing. Lastly, and sorry guys, my voice is a little bit, I have the end of a cold, so I'm having a hard time speaking, but the Ledger just put out their white paper, I believe it was yesterday, and for that whole seed phrase recovery. And they encourage everybody to read that white paper and figure it out for themselves. And I think they did a better job this time of the release of this and how they presented it. So that's something for everybody to do your own research on. But it goes into I didn't read it over or study it. I just read the article over. But that does explain kind of how it all works, that recovery, which, like you said, Scott, it's a lot of responsibility for, and you didn't say this part, but for a lot of unresponsible people, which is true. Like it takes time. Like like Scott and I have talked about before. We've said we don't know if we'd be able to be responsible for our seed phrases up to this point, in our lives, and it's true. It's a lot. So something to look into. But anyways, if you want to go over to your one on or any of them, but that one on BlackRock
Okay.
or yes.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. Let's see. Well, this is just a little bit about sort of an overview. This is a big week. Bitcoin is up, back up to its highs of the year, and so there's a lot of speculation as to why. I have an alternative perspective that I want to share of why it might be raising, but right now you've got BlackRock. Let me scroll down here. So down here, what's going on? BlackRock, as much cryptocurrency was invented to disrupt finance, as we know, nothing excites the market like credibility that a household name of financial players brings. I think that's what's really interesting about this is that, we've been in sort of a bear market. Crypto market's been up and down, kind of went up a little bit, now it's been back down. And, to me, there's always been this catch-22. If you're in the crypto space, you know that when the institutional players start coming into crypto, it's going to raise the price of crypto. It's going to sort of raise the status of it. That's good. Our bags go up. But do we want the old traditional finance to kind of come in and try to control what I call new finance? And they're not going to play nice, they're going to want to maintain as much control as they can. And so this is like potentially the first, maybe not the first, but this is an attempt to get in, get everybody excited, and then they're going to try to get their tendrils into this and to control and centralize as much as they can. So it's good and bad for sure. So besides that, there is Deutsche Bank. They now want to do an ETF, or I think Deutsche Bank wants to basically provide crypto services to their clients, to their institutional clients, and then there is a new exchange called the EDX is going to be Schwab and Fidelity, and they're going to create a crypto brokerage account, but it's not for retail. It's just for institutional clients. So all this news came out this week of all this institutional adoption. But what's interesting about it, it's mostly Bitcoin and Ethereum. They're not messing around with altcoins, of course. But this. I didn't realize, I guess, how big a deal this was until one of my mentors. He's like, guys, this is the beginning of it. This once BlackRock gets into this, it'll open the door for a flood of also other big institutions to come into the space, and it's sort of like the green light. Now, here is my conspiracy theory. It's actually not that conspiracy. It's not too hard to put these dots together. So you've got the SEC, you got Gary Gensler, basically, and Choke Point 2.0, the government trying to, sue crypto, slow crypto down. You've got the banking crisis that was really started with these crypto-friendly banks that got into trouble. And my take on that is that the SEC and the Fed, they basically could have saved them, but they're like pushed them out the door. Like, you crypto banks, good riddance. Let's just get rid of you. Let's cleanse the system of you guys, and then we'll get the system back going. Even though it was a traditional banking crisis, other banks that weren't all crypto got into trouble too, and there may be further. There was this component of crypto that it was a flushing out of crypto-friendly banking. And then, so you had all this going on this year, right? And then you've got the latest big shots from the SEC of suing Binance and Coinbase. And then literally not even a week later, after that news, maybe about a week later, all of this institutional news comes in. Well, what's the coincidence there? I mean, to me, it clearly looks like the government and institutions, large financial institutions, were together, sort of, how much it was planned, I don't know, but basically together they're like, here's how I look at it. All right, government, you slow down crypto right now until we can kind of get our ducks in a row, institutional financial companies, and then once you kind of clear that path, then we'll kind of swoop in, and this will be our foothold. And now that we didn't quite move fast enough early on, but now we kind of get it. Seems like the environment's good. We're going to swoop in and take over. And that'll protect us, the large financial institutions, from losing our control. And it will protect you, government, too, because now you won't lose control. You can roll in your Fed now in July and then roll in your CBDC. By that time, we'll have this whole thing figured out. And we can get rid of this pesky little crypto industry. It's, the technology's there. We want to use that. It is the future. We're going to use the blockchain. We're going to do this, but we don't want any of this independent stuff like Coinbases, and we want to control everything. Now that's being kind of flippant about it, but that's sort of my connection. All this has happened too close together, and so so I always like to say, let me get back here. I always like to say, I'm just a lonely little retail investor, right? I don't really care about all this stuff in the grand scheme. As long as I can trade my crypto, be in crypto, have my custodied self wallet. And so this is actually good news for that part of me, because this is going to raise crypto. This is going to Bitcoin's going to take off. I mean, really, if all these guys get in there, because one of the things about this is that, and I'm not going to go into the ETF thing other than to say what I didn't understand about an ETF is they're actually, in an ETF, it's like you buy the ETF and you can trade and exchange the ETF certificate, if you will, that's tied to Bitcoin, but they actually go in and buy the asset. So when I'm buying an ETF, a bunch of people buy the ETF, which is the Bitcoin ETF, they actually purchase BTC. And whereas in mutual funds and trusts, they don't actually do that. It doesn't actually, or futures also, there's a Bitcoin futures contract. They're not actually buying Bitcoin. They're just buying on the future. I don't even understand futures that much. But this means that when we all start buying a Bitcoin ETFs, they're actually buying Bitcoin. So the price of Bitcoin is going to go way up. So This is why it's bigger than I even thought. And now Bitcoin's going to surge. There's only 21 million Bitcoin available. There isn't enough Bitcoin available for all the big guys to get in and to do what they can do. So the only thing that can happen is the price to shoot way, way, way up. I mean, the more you think about this, I mean, $100,000 Bitcoin in a year doesn't seem that far off if you've got these big guys going in there. And a lot of people are saying, yeah, if the big guys trust it, I guess I'm going to trust it. And I'm going to now, where I've never been in crypto before, I'm going to put some money in a Bitcoin ETF. Sounds good to me. So it's huge. It's really huge.
Wisdom Tree it's called Wisdom Tree and Invesco are the other two major investment companies that joined following BlackRock. So it's a domino effect going. There's multiple ones coming in. Sorry, I just wanted to throw that in. Keep going.
Yeah, no, that's right. Was the third leg of it. So you had major financial institutions. They're all going to try to get a Bitcoin ETF. I think August is the earliest that it could happen, if it happens. Now, I mean, the SEC still has to approve it, but I'm thinking this whole thing was figured out in advance. So it probably will. BlackRock's record is 571 attempts at all other types of ETFs and one. They've only been denied once. So they don't jump in unless they know they can win and it's all but a foregone conclusion as far as most people can tell that it will finally happen. And it's been lots of institutions have been trying to get this for a long time, and the SEC has always said no. So, whatever is happening. So for investors, this is big, and this is what I think. I want to spread out to people that are on the fence. It's like, you better get into Bitcoin now.
Yeah, that window of time is narrowing. It's probably narrowing really quick. And for
31,000 is going to be super low, even though now we're like, oh, now it's high. It was down to 19. No, get in now. And it will take all the other cryptos with it, and that's the thing. It's gonna, ETH for sure. But so, anyways, it's happening. I don't know when. Because they are saying that this could be just a 10% blip, 14% or whatever. It can go down again, between now and the end of the year, I'm not predicting anything. But in the next 1 to 2 years, 100,000 Bitcoin seems totally doable, in my opinion.
So at what rate do they then control, at some point when you have institutions like BlackRock, then they can somewhat become a big enough whale to be able to control the market at some point. Is that right?
Well, there's a whole other thought process theory about that, about the when you've got a limited supply like that, can the big guys control the market? Now, it's interesting because there's some people that say that in the stock market, the retail investor really has no chance because the big guys totally control the market. As I study trading more and more, the little guy has little opportunities here and there because as the market does swing up and down, you can trade it, and get profits here and there if you kind of understand trend reversal, and also understand when the big guys are getting in and moving money around. So I think what it says as a retail investor in stocks or crypto or whatever is that the big guys dominate, the big guys run the show. And we haven't seen that yet totally in crypto, even though it's still to a certain degree how the stock market, other markets, the economy, a lot of things also affect Bitcoin and the crypto market. When they're down, crypto is down too, to a certain degree. But in the stock market and a lot of the other financial markets, the big guys run the show, and so what it tells me is a retail investor, you gotta what's the word? You gotta know what you're doing. You gotta have the time to do it because you can't just willy-nilly wing it in the stock market. You can't just go buy a few shares of Apple and say, okay, look, I'll wait 30 years or whatever. There's so much that the market does go up and down, and so it's volatility that retail investors can scrape profits. And but to me, that means you got to pay attention. You got to read charts. You got to know, and strategically put in trades in and out. You can't just sit around. Now, and that's if you want to call yourself like a trader. If you're literally just investing for your retirement, and you want to, you just put them in mutual funds, right? That mimic the stock market. Now, the problem with that now is that used to be the case. All my life growing up, that was what people said. Just put the money in the stock market because eventually over 30, 40 years, it's always gone up. And if you can get 10%, you're doing really good. And now things are reversed. The stock market isn't always the best thing now. And now there's crypto. Crypto is the most volatile, but it also is the fastest rising and highest percentages, right? And so it's just, everything is, in the bond market. Now, I don't know a lot about bonds, but that is kind of flipped upside down now, so it's, what I'm understanding is that for, people that have been in finance, and they're in their 50s, 40s, 50s, 60s or whatever, and they've the environment's been a certain way. Like, it's all different now. Like, not only is crypto a whole new asset class, but the bond market's flipped. The stock market doesn't do what it does. There's inflation, interest rates, which have been zero now, are higher. I mean, everything's upside down. So it's a really interesting time. It's kind of weird because I'm at that age, but I just really didn't pay attention before. So I'm kind of glad that all of a sudden now I'm paying attention because I didn't have to unlearn a whole bunch of stuff, or feel like I wanted to cling on to the past. I'm totally embracing the future and this new paradigm. So quite interesting time to be in investing, and it's exciting because Bitcoin, crypto, not only does it bring this whole new asset class, which is just interesting and fun and very lucrative. There's the metaverse, there's Web3, there's DeFi, there's NFTs. I mean, it's cool shit.
It is. I know. And I get the question pretty regularly, and I'll have people message me and ask me, and it's always like the same question. And it's, is crypto really a good investment? And I'm just like, and I appreciate that question, but I'm also like, okay, I don't even know where to start with this. Like, where do you even start?
Well, first of all, you start with yes. And then,
Yes.
But I just start with, so I'm curious what you do. I just start with yes, but it's volatile. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, but you better be in it. You better be in it a little bit. What do you say?
Yeah. I mean, it's always an evolving answer. It's always yes. But I wouldn't say, it's an evolving. It's always stacked on top of more things stacked. But I'm really all in it for like, now that I'm in it and where I am now and where I've been for about a year. To me, it's like, do you want to invest in your future? Like, if you know the times, like, pay attention to the times, understand the times. And like, do you like, it's all about the freedom for me. That's the number one. That's the number one. And also the number one is like, do you want to put your energy and your time into things that you value, that you truly value? Like, what do you truly value? And if you understand the paper dollar, which is almost non-existent, and then you understand digital currencies and you understand Bitcoin, what do you value? That's kind of like, that's like such it takes a lot of research for people to get to that point, and just experience and time. But yeah, is it a good investment over time? And knowing what you're investing in, I mean, pretty much on top of everything that you said, diversifying, not putting all your eggs in one basket, doing research, and really focusing. I think that's the hardest thing, is for people to focus on putting some time into understanding it all. So
what would you say to somebody? What would you say to somebody that's like, I don't want to research. I don't have time to research. I don't have time to do my own research. Is it still a good investment?
Yeah, I'd say put a little bit, I mean, without giving investment advice, what I would tell myself would be put a little bit into like what you can afford to have somewhere, like as into Bitcoin, and continually do that. That's simple. But that's, if you're not, if you don't want to get too risky, then that's the least risky in my view. Talking to myself, I'm not giving advice to anybody else. But that's, in my view, that's what I would say to do. Learn how to invest in some Bitcoin and start there.
What if somebody says, what are you talking about freedom? Like, I have all the freedom I need. I've got a checking account. I've got money in my bank. I've got dollars. I can go to an ATM. I can pull them out. I can buy anything I want. What more freedom do I need? What do you tell those people? Because there's a lot of people that think that. That's what they think. That's what they think.
I would say read the Bitcoin white paper.
Okay.
Read the Bitcoin white paper. 8 pages.
Yeah.
And then
no, that's a good answer.
Maybe open up
8 pages.
Yeah.
And then, I think, I what I like, 2 things. Keep it simple, right? For the people that are asking these kind of questions, just keep it simple. And that's not that they can't, necessarily learn it, but it's just like, if they haven't touched it yet and they're at all asking the question, that's good. That means they're kind of curious. And I would say, yeah, read the Bitcoin white paper, because that'll introduce you to something. It might hook you or stir something. Maybe it doesn't. That's fine. But at least you kind of know basically what it is and what it isn't and why it was created. And then 2, blah blah blah. No, I forgot number 2, but it was simple. I think it was. It was if you just put some in and say, look, talk to anybody, even to a financial advisor now. Even though they may not be able to do it for you, most people would say, yeah, put a little bit in there. And what I think it's important about that is when you finally do put something in there, just even a little bit, that gets you curious. It makes you pay attention. If you never put any in it and you keep asking the question, you'll just never have that incentive to really research it or look into it. But the minute you put in $100 even into Bitcoin, I bet donuts to dollars that you will occasionally look up the price. And if you're looking up the price, you're going to get curious and more curious. And then you're going to watch a news article and it's going to say something about Bitcoin on, national TV. And you're like, oh, okay, how does that work? To me, that's the little crack, get people started. And, without putting any money at all, it just doesn't work. You just ignore it and move on.
And do you know anybody who doesn't get completely fascinated by all this? I mean, and that's the other thing. It's if you're not a reader and you can't buckle down for the 8 pages, I feel like one really good place to start is Andreas Antonopoulos in that interview with Brian Rose. He's done a couple, but this is the first one was an old interview. Yeah. I don't even know how long ago that was, but it was a long time ago. And it was when Andreas Antonopoulos, before the hype of Bitcoin, and he is a super smart guy, and he locked himself down for months and was studying Bitcoin, the technology, the white paper, and all of it. And he's kind of talking about all of that. So it was his basics in that interview. That's a really good place to start, is watching those interviews. They were so interesting. And kind of gives you those aha moments. And if you're oh, I don't have time, well, if you replace 3 hours of Netflix with a super interesting interview and replace 3 lattes with $20 of Bitcoin, you can make that little bit happen. So that's what long-winded answer, but that's what I would say.
Well, that's a good place to end on. And then I would just add there, watch Crypto Talk with Brianna and Scott and share it to all your friends, because, man, you can get some really good nuggets here, AI and all sorts of crazy stuff. Anyways, well, thanks for watching, everybody. Be sure to let us know, comment on wherever you're watching this, on Facebook or YouTube. Let us know what you like, what you want to see more of. And we'll see you here every week, every Friday. All right.
Friday, we'll see you next week. Thanks, guys.
Bye, everybody.
Have a good weekend.